I'm Barbara Lorenz, and you are listening to Bitcoin-Kaba, the podcast from Bitcoin-Basis. Today, I'm joined by Vivian Cheng, also known as BTCviv, host and producer of Life with Bitcoin podcast and producer of Bitcoin Asia, a passionate advocate for Bitcoin and a freedom maximalist. Vivian shares her unique journey into the Bitcoin world, from starting in a marketing role to embracing Bitcoin as a tool for personal and financial freedom. We discuss the challenges she faced in understanding Bitcoin's technical aspects, her distinction between Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, and how Bitcoin shapes her life and work. Whether you are new to Bitcoin or an experienced Bitcoiner, Vivian's story offers inspiring insights. Hi, Vivian. Thanks for joining me today in the podcast.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be here and looking forward to chat.
So let's just dive right into it. Can you please tell me about your Bitcoin journey? What was your orange pill?
Of course, my name is BTCviv. I've been working in Bitcoin industry for the past more than 3.5 years, and surprisingly, and funny enough, the time where I was a Bitcoiner, I have been a Bitcoiner, is actually shorter than that. So in short, while many people try to get a Bitcoin job once they've become a Bitcoiner, it was the other way around for me. So I got a Bitcoin job first. I wasn't a Bitcoiner at the time. I did not know pretty much anything about Bitcoin, nor having any industry experience, but I was hired by a Bitcoin company to do marketing and PR related tasks. And it was right at the beginning of 2021. At the time, it was still harder to find people to work in this industry that actually have industry experience. So I guess I was one of the person that got recruited during this time, lucky me. So from working in the blockchain space, I went through a deep learning curve of trying to understand what Bitcoin is and what like even blockchain is. And then once I realized what Bitcoin means for freedom, as a freedom maximalist, there was no going back from that point. So I gained my full conviction from understanding the freedom aspect of Bitcoin.
So, what was the most challenging aspect of the steep learning curve? Because there is like a lot to get around in crypto and blockchain and Bitcoin as well. Like, how did you even start?
I would say the technical side of it, I'm not a technical person till this day after working in the industry for some time. I'm still not a technical person. And I guess the biggest challenge for me at the beginning was to understand what is a blockchain. Like it's so basic, but it's such a new term for me at the time to grasp a meaning and to understand why it matters and how it matters and all these great promises like limited supply. What is the process and protocol that can actually allow such thing to happen to the point that it's not something that's too good to be true. And I remember at the time taking a long walk and listening to these podcasts, and I would search for blockchain 101, and there were already a lot of blockchain podcasts there, and I wasn't directly tuning into Bitcoin. I was just trying to understand the general industry. So I would say the technical part to get over a basic understanding of how Bitcoin functions was one of the challenging part. And then the second challenging part, and luckily I didn't have to go through it this much, is because it's the distinction between crypto and Bitcoin. Many people still don't make the distinction today, and they think it's all cryptocurrencies and the same thing, but it's actually not. The proof of work mentality and how Bitcoin community functions is very different from the rest of the blockchain altcoin community. However, lucky for me, again, I have been working with a lot of Bitcoin maximalists. So if I got exposed to a lot of from the very beginning with people actively trying to share how Bitcoin and crypto are different, then I felt like I dodged a bullet there because I never really indulged in any of the altcoin ever, partially due to the information I got access to, partially because I'm lazy. I'm a lazy person when it comes to money, and all these altcoin, they seem it's not something I'm interested in. I'm not technical enough to really understand a white paper oftentimes. And then what I feel like now I have Bitcoin as my saving vehicle. It's the sound money that is the only sound money that I will ever need. Then I almost couldn't be bothered to look into altcoins, which have ultimately saved a lot of my time and energy into doing something else that's more productive and beneficial to the community. So I would say to get over the technical hurdle, and then the distinction between crypto and Bitcoin would be two of the major challenges, not only for me, but I guess for everyone out there who are not overly technical and trying to understand the technicality of Bitcoin, as well as what makes it so different.
As you said that you are like a freedom maximalist, has this involvement with Bitcoin influenced this kind of like personal philosophy? And what does it mean to be a freedom maximalist?
I guess I'll share a little bit of my background. So I grew up in Beijing. I was born and raised there, and I left at 18 years old. So I've spent my entire adulthood by myself somewhere in the world, which has been an amazing opportunity because you really get to make all of your decisions, like pretty much all of your decisions you have to make by yourself, and then you have to really take care of yourself in all situations, and that you have to be sovereign enough, you have to have enough agency to really take the responsibility and then say, I'm gonna go explore, but meanwhile I'm gonna come back in one piece and alive. So over time, I love, so there are two aspects, there are many aspects of freedom, and there are two, if we categorize them, there are two main aspects where we can say freedom is to do something that we would to have the freedom to do something that we love to do. And then the flip side of it, which is equally important, is to be able to have the freedom to say no to things that we don't want to do. And of course, there's a moral layer of it. You shouldn't be going out there and do bad things. But from a personal freedom perspective, there's the element of being able to do something and being able to not do something at will, right? So I've always been like this. I've always been trying to achieve personal freedom in a way that what are in a self-exploration way. Because if I discover something about me that I want to pursue, then it comes down to, do I actually have the freedom to pursue that? And if I
Mhm.
discover something about myself that I shouldn't be doing, or it doesn't fit who I am or my personality, but do I really have the choice to not do it? So I think what where Bitcoin comes in, is to actually enable me to live a life as a freedom maximalist. Because now, with the sound money, with the saving vehicle that I have, and working in this industry, which provides a lot of flexibility, I can actually have the freedom or extra options to choose things and be more sovereign around, how do I spend my time? How do I spend my energy? How do I contribute to this community? So there's Bitcoin actually enables me to make basically my dream a reality.
Wow. So, as a freedom and Bitcoin maximalist, then basically it enables you to be self-sovereign in today's world.
I wouldn't call myself I wouldn't call myself Bitcoin maximalist per se, just because oftentimes we see, especially on Bitcoin Twitter, people are proud to be toxic when it comes to Bitcoin maximalist. They think, many people would say that if we know this is the case, there's no second best. And then the harder we can drive this message, the sooner we can hopefully have everybody on board with the statement. So the toxicity is one approach, but I'm taking a different approach. I'm a very bubbly person. I can't be very toxic even if I tried, especially on social media and trying to share my message. So I have to stay true to myself, to stay on the bubbly lane, and I guess hopefully bring a more different energy, positive energy into Bitcoin. So I would say I'm Bitcoin only, and which is the same thing, but taking away that toxic approach that the stereotypical Bitcoin maximalist would take.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely have negative connotation as well. But when I think of someone who is a big Bitcoin maximalist, I wouldn't necessarily think of automatically of someone who is like forcing you to only see Bitcoin. But yeah, that's true. You traveled a lot around the world. You lived many places. How does this like global experience shaped your understanding of Bitcoin's role, like in general, in people's life?
I've been very fortunate to being able to live and travel to different places. And it just goes to show, I guess, the biggest takeaway that's Bitcoin related and how it strengthens my understanding is to see how people like to see different walks of lives in different places, and to remind myself to never assume, because if we live in one place and we grow up in one place and we don't see much, and it's easier for us to assume that this is what it should be and this is what it is, and just accept the status quo instead of thinking, oh, this there could be a different way of doing this. And by looking at different people in different places, either it's from more developed places or less developed places, and see how they approach life on a daily basis, to approach daily problems that we all have to solve as humans, is very eye-opening. And it just constantly reminds me to be more open-minded, to not assume that I know better, and then to always be prepared to listen and learn, but at the same time to remain independent on who and what influenced me. So it's a lot of information around us all the time. I guess it's on us, it's our responsibility to recognize what are the signals and what are the noise. And I guess by exposing myself in different situations in different parts of the world, this is a muscle that I really get to stretch, I guess, because of Bitcoin, but also for Bitcoin. And Bitcoin kind of, and how Bitcoin enables me to do that also, it's very karmatic in a way, because lots of the time when I'm traveling these days is for Bitcoin, it's for work, and it's for spreading Bitcoin awareness. So the entire thing feels very karmatic and cosmic to me, that I'm deeply grateful for.
Is that why you started your podcast, to see more perspectives from other people on how they use Bitcoin in their everyday life? Or what was the main reason behind it?
Yes. So the Live with Bitcoin podcast has been around for more than 1 year. It is a podcast where we delve into the personal transformations of Bitcoin, basically taking a micro lens on Bitcoin to see what is to feature on the transformative power and cultural aspects in Bitcoin. There's several reasons why I started doing this. I'm a marketing and PR professional in this space, and usually I'm the person who's pitching, who's sharing my clients' information to conferences, to podcasts, and try to land them a spot for an interview. And what I've realized is that the majority of the Bitcoiners nowadays, even though we're facing major adoption right now, but the majority of people who are before us, they're either into technology or they're into economics. And this is just a reality of, because Bitcoin are these things. And then as early adopters, these are the most prominent aspects of Bitcoin that caught people's attention. So it's natural that the current subset of Bitcoin content gravitate towards that direction. However, I'm not a technical person. I'm someone who just want to have a set money to save and then do the proof of work. And I'm interested in things like music and culture and art and things that are not technical in general. I'm not particularly savvy for economics either. So these things make me think that there are going to be people just like me around the world that may not be super interested in technology or economics, but Bitcoin is also for them. And Bitcoin is even more for them in a way. And because if you think about it, if you have the hobby to be into technology and economics in the first place, and it's likely that you're more likely to be in a societally fortunate circumstances to even be starting to interested in these subjects. So there are other people that are just like this, and then they need Bitcoin too. And how can I fill in the gap to focus on the personal aspect of Bitcoin? And then the other thing is that I'm a very sensitive person in terms of my environment. If I consume negative content, then my mood will get significantly impacted, and I have to do extra work just to get back to where I was. But the world we live in today is very chaotic, and when it comes to explaining Bitcoin to the mass, how it's going to help, how it's going to fix the world and direct it towards a better way, we have to draw on reality examples from reality, and this is depressing sometimes. And personally, I try to protect my energy and not consume too much of these contents. So I also want to portray Bitcoin in a more positive light so that people can come to this show and then listen to people's stories and how they've taken their own leap of faith to create something that they're proud of, and then they can walk away from the episode feeling more hopeful, feeling more motivated, and have more inspirations and equipped it with more positive mindset and little actionable tips for themselves to start a project of their own and to achieve their life's potential. So this is basically the hope of the show, and where a lot of the podcast in Bitcoin, where Bitcoin is the subject at Live with Bitcoin, Bitcoin is really the context, because there are many times where we go through entire conversation and barely talk about Bitcoin, but we talk about things like a relationship, we talk about parenting and homeschooling and designing a game, finding a community. So these things that are more human, that we share as human experience, those are the things I would like to focus on and really try to fill in the gap of bringing more positive energy, bringing more feminine energy into the Bitcoin community.
So it's the drop of hopium that everyone needs next to their daily coffee, so they can feel like normal even in the bear market.
Yeah, exactly. I try.
So you mentioned arts and music. That's actually interesting because I would think that if you are like an artist or artist or like more like an artistic type of person, then you would be into NFTs and saving your content in that way. Have you thought about, are you creating art? And if you do, are you doing ordinals as well, like NFTs on Bitcoin or?
So I'm more into physical art, so I did that. And then I did that. So sometimes I paint. I go through periods. So some periods I would do painting more often, and some periods I would do other things. Right now I'm more delved into the music world. I guess I would say I'm an avid musician. Coming this year with my bandmate, we're releasing an EP with 5 original songs. We're in the final production phase, so hopefully at end of the towards end of the year in the fall, it's sometime we get to actually release these songs. And interestingly, I wrote these songs. Those songs are basically resulted from the trips I took in different parts of the world. Sometimes because of Bitcoin, because this lifestyle enabled by Bitcoin allowed me to travel to different places, and combined with the circumstances at the time, like the personal challenges I had to go through, and then the vibe of the place, my experience there. So these are the reason why these songs existed. So those are not Bitcoin songs. Not in any songs you would hear the word Bitcoin ever, but these songs wouldn't have existed if it wasn't for Bitcoin.
So Bitcoin has influenced your creative processes as well.
100% for sure. In a way, it's enabled by the lifestyle that Bitcoin allowed me to live. It's enabled by the people in the Bitcoin community that have warmed my heart and gave me so much support so that I even started doing something like this. So it's the whole community, and the life with Bitcoin itself is really worth living for me already, regardless of the monetary aspect.
You mentioned that the Life with Bitcoin podcast focuses on personal transformations through Bitcoin. And yeah, like you are like highlighting the personal stories and then the life of these people who are knee deep in Bitcoin and crypto probably in general. How do you choose your guests? Or is there any criteria that you do your selections based on?
Yeah, so it's a show where we really delve into the personal aspect. So the guest on my show, I ask them very personal questions.
Mhm.
And there are times now we're into it for more than a year, and sometimes I receive pitches from different companies and say, "Oh, our CEO wants to come on the show and talk about this project." And usually, mm, I will have to turn them down because it's not about project. It's not necessarily about it is about building, but it's not necessarily about building a project. It's about building yourself as a person. So I often tell them, if you can share with me your life story and what are basically I'm looking for people who are interesting who are interesting, who are bold, in the sense that they have taken the leap of faith and done the proof of work and be consistent and done something that they were once afraid to do. And I want to uncover that process and see what it's like for them. What are the things that they've learned along the way? What were the main challenges? What made them this person? Like delve into their past, how they've grown up, and sometimes we even talk about trauma, and then we talk about faith. So what are the things that goes to the mix of making someone themselves, and what are the mix that goes to helping someone achieve their full potential. So this is really what I'm into, and I'm hoping through these timeless stories, the listeners, the audience can pick up little things here and there that will benefit them, that will motivate them to start something of their own, to ask themselves more frequently who I am, what I'm supposed to do here, and how can I get started? How can I get there? And sometimes when we are already on our way there, we get frustrated or we get distracted by reality, by things around us, by different circumstances. And then I want to be able to have the audience come back to the show and get a little bit more motivation to keep going. So that's really the mission of the show.
Who was your most memorable guest so far in the past year?
In the past year,
Yeah.
I have a lot of great guests. All of them are great because right now I really have full creative control, and the only complaint is that I only have it's a bi-weekly show. It's every 2 weeks. So I only have so much time to do this on the side. Otherwise I would talk to more people. All of them are really good, and one particularly interesting one, I would say it's Roger 9000. So I talked to Roger 9000 a couple months ago. He's a musician, and but he's also into mythology, into many things that are unrelated to Bitcoin. And we were talking about how he believes Bitcoin is a purifying process, and we were talking about purity. We're talking about what makes someone and something pure, and all these topics that you don't necessarily see in a Bitcoin podcast, let alone any podcast. And these are the conversations I love to indulge all the time.
It's sometimes you just sit down with a person and then you let your flow take you wherever it needs to take you.
Exactly. And that comes with a lot of preparation too. I definitely try to do my homework. And sometimes the guest would say something really interesting in other interviews, but they don't have time to delve into that. Or there's sometimes they say something and I want to challenge that, or I want to ask follow-up questions. So this is something that I will bring up onto our conversation and say, you said this here, so explain what you mean. Or you said this here, like why do you think this? And if you think this is right, what's next? How can we embody this principle and live our lives better? So I would try to basically dig deeper on what they've already said and then go from there. Sometimes they would surprise me and then we would go on tangents.
So you must be like a naturally curious person. Is that something that you are like, were you like this since you were a kiddo, or?
I am. I love strangers. I love talking to strangers. It hasn't been always the most productive thing for me, but I love it. I love people. I like to understand how people function and how people are what they are, and how people are and why people are what they are. So I try to answer these questions with people that I meet in my real life, as well as in all sorts of different interactions. And yeah, I would say I'm a curious person when it comes to human, and I love to understand more about humanity as a whole, and I'm experiencing humanity through my own life. So humanity in general, it's a very interesting topic for me.
So is that why you chose marketing as your main field? Because you like to work with people and then you're like naturally curious to ask questions?
It is. I love psychology growing up. Psychology, sociology, like I like to understand how people's mind work. And when we were choosing majors in university, I know I'm not a numbers person. I was miserable going through accounting classes and finance classes in university, because in how the school was set up, you have to go through the fundamentals of every subjects before you pick a major. So I had miserable time working with numbers and I knew that I like project-based roles, project-based type of work more than steady and slow and steady, in the sense that this is what you do and you are always doing that. I like challenges. I like doing new things and exposed to new problems and ideas. And marketing seemed to be something that combines human psychology, and gave me the potential to potentially work in a project based environment, which is what I do now, that can give me this adrenaline and give me this exposure of new problem sets, new ideas, and creative problems for problem solving in general. So that's my jam.
What is your day-to-day work in general now in PR and marketing in crypto or in Bitcoin? Sorry.
Right now, my main role, I work with the Bitcoin conference and I'm the producer for Bitcoin Asia. The first year that happened in May, and then we're going to do a next one next year. The date and location is to be determined and to be announced. And in between the event, so I do event production for Bitcoin Asia. And then
Mhm.
in between event production for Asia, I'm doing media relations for other of the Bitcoin conferences. So for the Nashville conference, I did media relation there for, and then I'm doing media relations for the coming up Bitcoin Amsterdam and Bitcoin Mina, that's organized by the same company. And I'm doing the podcast on the side as a passion project, and then the music, that's really a hobby at this point, but we're trying to take it more seriously and see where we can take it.
So when you set up the communication for these conferences, how do you approach communicating to different type of people, for example, the beginners and then the OGs and anyone in between?
So when it comes to talking, I think the question here maybe like talking to Bitcoin to people who have a different knowledge, the different level of knowledge and experience in Bitcoin.
Yeah.
One thing that I realized that really helped when it comes to like orange peeling people, we're talking to people specifically who are not yet into Bitcoin, is it's better, personally, it's better for me, it's better to ask questions than answer the questions. Is because when we're trying to sell our idea to bring them onto the Bitcoin, when we have a message to share, sometimes we can get fixated on what we want to share. Like we want to get our point across, and then we just pile informations on top of information, and hopefully, because we know so much, we think we know so much, and we want to give it to them so that they understand too. So we keep talking and just pile up the information to the point that they are overwhelmed or no longer interested or just don't see a point. But if we take a different approach and just say a little bit and stop, but and then ask the question, what is your current struggle with money? Or even just to ask them, what is money? What is money? And then they'll be like, money is, they would, if you ask them questions they've never thought about, they themselves would start thinking. And and then if you don't say much, but you look like a lot, the FOMO is gonna rise naturally from themselves and they're gonna start asking questions. If they can only say medium of exchange as one function of the money, but you're like, but that's only one thing. There's so many other things that what money is and what money should be. And then they can't think of any, they would ask you, so what is money? And then you can talk. And then you can talk. Money is this, money is store of value, money is medium exchange, and all these things. And then you can ask them another question. Do you think your currency, whatever, wherever you are, is fulfilling all of these? How your money is doing in fulfilling all of these, and how your life have been impacted by how the money is.
Mm.
And then by asking them questions, they're gonna, oh, you're right. Like I'm dealing with inflation. This is not very good. I have to work a lot of work to keep up my lifestyle. And that's maybe it's not my problem. Maybe it's the money. And
Mhm.
then they will be like, so what's the solution? Do you have a way to mitigate from this? And then you tell them what's the solution. So you really have to identify the pinpoint, and it's better if they land on that point themselves, then you tell them, oh, this is where your life is wrong, and they should land on that argument themselves. So that's when they would have the motivation to change and have the conviction to really stick to it.
So do you think that everyone should understand Bitcoin or learn about Bitcoin eventually?
Not necessarily, because look at how we use internet these days. And now today we say that, oh, I want to find a Bitcoin job, but no one says I want to find an internet job, because all of the work from being a cashier at a supermarket to rocket scientist, we all deal with computer on a daily basis, and we don't categorize them as computer internet job. And
Mhm.
Bitcoin will get to that point, and that's going to be the point where not everybody needs to understand Bitcoin to a extensive level. They don't need to understand how it works. I don't understand how internet works. It still feels like magic to me that I can see you across the world, real time, having a real time conversation. It still feels like magic to me, and Bitcoin will always feel like magic internet money to me, but that's fine because it works, and because the people in this community, they're actively protecting it and contributing to humanity basically through Bitcoin. That's really how I would like to think about it. So the answer to your question, I guess my answer is that you don't need to understand Bitcoin to a extreme technical level, but you have to understand why the fundamental principles matter. We have to understand why scarcity makes a difference in resources. We have to understand why low time preference will enable us to live more fulfilled life. We have to understand the concept of proof of work, why the proof of work is the honest approach, and why we should choose proof of work over proof of stake. I think these concepts people need to understand to uh, gain the muscle so that we appreciate Bitcoin for what it is. But in terms of how Bitcoin works, then that's the bit where I'm happy not knowing. And a lot of people don't have to know to use it or to directly enjoy the benefit of it.
But you do believe that there will be like an international, but like a mass adoption in general in the future, maybe even in our lifetime.
It's gonna happen in our lifetime. It's gonna happen in our lifetime. So the thing, what I've identified is that for us individuals, if we want to go down a path and have somewhat success, then we start with faith. If we don't believe we're gonna do it, then we're not gonna do it. And if we have the faith that we will achieve hyper Bitcoinization in our lifetime, it's not guaranteed it's gonna happen. But if we don't believe it, it's just guaranteed not gonna happen. And this is a theme that repetitively repeat on my show with my guests, is that it really starts with the face. It always starts with the face. And that's a little bit counterintuitive when you think about how Bitcoiners talk about don't trust, verify. And but the face itself is trusting, is to trust without the verifications, right? Because the verification has yet to come. But when we are taking the leap of faith for personal development or significant decisions, it comes down to that commitment. It comes down to the leap of faith, saying that I have the faith that we will get there, and I'm going to be a part of it to make it happen. And I think that's the starting point before proof of work, to get us motivated and get us do the internal subconscious work to motivate us to do proof of work. And the second step to achieve any goal that will take us some time would be proof of work. And that's what Bitcoiners talk about. And then the third step would be consistency, which is the low time preference aspect. And then it's to repeat. So it's really, the Bitcoin ethos is really embodied in how to be a more fulfilled individual, achieving our own potentials in general. And that's why we see people's life changed by Bitcoin. And I've never met a Bitcoiner who would disagree on the statement of Bitcoin changed my life. Every single Bitcoiner I've ever met, they've always say Bitcoin changed my life. And they would all agree that Bitcoin does that to you. And yeah, and this is another reason why Life with Bitcoin choose to feature on this statement overall, to basically uncover the story of what it's like to live as a Bitcoiner. Because if people who are not yet into the space and then they look at these group of people called Bitcoiners, whatever that means, and say, oh, these people seem to be more loved. These people, for whatever reason, seem to be more connected. They're more fulfilled. They're healthier. They're freer. And I want to be that person. I want to be that person as a human, not because I care about Bitcoin, but because I want to be that person. And if these people, these Bitcoiners, achieve this state of mind or this life stage through Bitcoin, then maybe I should look into it because I really want to be in that position. And at that point, it's not going to be the Bitcoin that I care about. It's me caring about achieving my full potential as a human being and how can I utilize Bitcoin to get there. So the Bitcoin is really a means to an end to help us live a fuller experience as ourselves, each individual.
But it all starts with faith. Actually, this morning I was getting ready and I was thinking of like how delusional I was when I was a kiddo. And I was actually like imagining my life as it is right now. And I was like, how did that even happen? Like, how did we get here? And definitely Bitcoin played a major part in that for sure. So, do you use Bitcoin as an investment then? So you're not using it per se in your day-to-day life just for like miscellaneous transactions for paying for your coffee or anything like that. It's more of a store of value for you, right?
I use it when I can. There are places that are actually really Bitcoin friendly, and if I see that they take Bitcoin, then I would pay for with Bitcoin. It's a form of money, and then when we do achieve hyper Bitcoinization, everybody will be or along the way to get there, people will get more comfortable spending their Bitcoin. I used to be I used to be a little bit hesitant. I used to be a little iffy on spending my Bitcoin. And I thought, oh, I want to stack sats and is always spent buying and never selling. And I used to have this mentality. And then the more Bitcoiner I talk to and the longer I'm in the space, the more I realize that this is a lifestyle. And to make Bitcoin a form of money, especially the sound money that we oh no it is, we need to start treat it as money. And what do we do as money? Like medium exchange is just one of the major aspect of what money is. So if we want Bitcoin to become money, then it comes back to the face. Then we have to believe that it's money. And believing it's a money meaning that we have to use it as a form of money. So I would still stack sats, but now I feel way more comfortable spending Bitcoin. And every time, especially via Lightning, it's done instantly on the spot, and it does feel like magic every time still that I'm doing it because it's really faster than credit cards. Like seriously, it's faster than credit cards. It's so easy. And then to know that they receive the sats instantly without all the intermediaries and it's a peer-to-peer, it somehow brings us closer. It brings a more community vibe to all of the transactions through Bitcoin on Lightning. So that's a nice feeling to have too.
So, how do you see the Bitcoin landscape in this sense evolving in the next few years? Do you think that there will be like more people accepting Bitcoin now and then joining the community in the next cycle?
So of course, we're already seeing it. And even from the past 3-4 years that I've been in the space, and I've seen lots of major adoptions and a lot of people who became Bitcoiners around the same time as I was are starting to really taking a lead and making a lot of contributions in this space and to educate people. And this is really funny because time, if we think about time, it's such a weird concept. And the time in Bitcoin seemed to be more intense than time in general because 1 year in Bitcoin, a lot can happen in 1 year in Bitcoin term. So it's amazing to see how people who have been a Bitcoiner for the past 2-3 years are now taking major roles in spreading Bitcoin adoption and are actively working in the space. And I think this will continue to happen. And we're now seeing a lot more perspective shift on moving away or including more of that diverse topics into the Bitcoin ecosystem and discourse. There's the Life with Bitcoin. There's DJ Valerie's Bitcoin for Peace. There's many great podcasts and outlets out there who that don't necessarily focus on Bitcoin itself, but incorporate as a context and talk about broader topics and the topics that we all share, the challenges we all go through as humans. And it doesn't matter where you are, who you are, what gender, what race you are, as long as you are a human being on this earth. This is something that we all want to achieve as humans because it's ingrained in us. And if we talk about more of the common about these topics and then incorporate Bitcoin into these different aspects, this is how we bring the next generation, next mass adoption wave that are happening right in front of us, literally right now and every single day.
So, is this part of your future goals with your podcast or Bitcoin related projects to be part of this evolution, revolution? Not sure which word is the right here.
It might be both, actually. For me, I'm very grateful to have stumbled upon Bitcoin in my 20s and to work in this space have been truly eye opening and definitely lots of challenges, but there's so many learning opportunities and there's so much to do. So I'm pretty prepared to work in Bitcoin long term. If I can, I'll try my best to really stay here and to make my part of the contribution into the community. Hopefully through my content or through the work I do, directly or indirectly contribute. There's more hope for people, there's more courage and strength for everyone. Either you're a Bitcoiner or not, if you encounter some of the stuff that we do collectively as Bitcoiners, then hopefully there's more hope, there's more strength and courage that inspire everyone to become their own person, to be more sovereign and achieve their life's potential. This is really what I'm here for. And I'll try my best to really deliver on that mission however I can.
Looking back on your journey, is there anything that you would do differently, learn differently, take a different route on that subject in Bitcoin?
No. I'll tell you why. I'm the type of person who don't regret. So it's not productive to regret. There's nothing you can change even if you do regret something. So I'm a very present person in the sense that I think about when I make decisions, I want to make sure that when I look back from the future, I'm still gonna make the same decision. Not with hindsight. Of course, if you cannot try to make different decisions with hindsight, because at the time you just don't have that hindsight. It's called hindsight for a reason. And I believe the path is the best path. I believe everything happens for a reason. And if I choose to think that everything happens for a reason and is for the better, and it's up to me to utilize that situation and make the most of it, then there's really nothing to be regretted about, because I'm simply carrying out my life. I'm in trying to enjoy this journey as much as I can, and it's not about the destination, it's about the journey itself, which I'm very much enjoying. And oftentimes, like for me, if one of my least favorite question is, where do you see yourself in 5 years? It's such a basically just like what you said, we just never know and we can never know. And to have a 5-year plan that only to be disrupted by whatever happens around us, and that for me will create more anxiety than anything. So it's somewhat delusional to even think ahead for 5 years and think that is exactly what's going to happen. Like we don't even know if we're going to be alive in 5 years, let alone planning for a life. So I take a very spontaneous approach to that, and at any given moment I'm just here to do my best. I'm just here to see how can I make the most of this as is. I don't ask why me, like why this happened. Like I never ask that. This is what it is. This is what happened. I'm just gonna, okay, so this is the situation now. I'm gonna see from where I stand right now, how can I improve from here? What can I do from here to help me go towards the direction that I want to go? Or what direction do I want to go here now that I'm here, right? You have to ask yourself these questions, and you have to be willing to be fluid and let time pass through you while you remain still. And I've identified this is approach that will work for me and gave me way more peace and make me more at ease with everything else that's happening in the world, sometimes often depressing. And it's hard to remain centered because you're hearing all this information and the world is burning down in different aspects. And as individuals, natural to feel overwhelmed and to worry and concerned. And I'm just trying my best with this method to not feel anxious and depressed with the external world and focus on how can I help? How can I help myself? How can I help others? And to focus on the smaller things that I can actually get started right away.
So is that part of your legacy that you want to leave, to teach people how to, okay, like how to focus on today and be a little bit better person and maybe enter Bitcoin and see how their life could change in terms of that?
I would say my biggest mission is to live that first myself because it's easier said than done. And if I don't live it and I say it, then it's not going to carry any weight and it's going to show. So the best way I believe is to really, for me to live it first and then to acquire that courage and strength myself and have it shine through and have it shine through my stories and the artwork I create and use these things, use the stories and the art and the product of my own life to inspire people that way instead of me saying to them that this is what they should be doing, because that's not going to carry as much weight as something that they personally choose to gravitate towards and personally get inspired. But it's not gonna be for everyone, because everyone, it kind of comes back to karma, because we're all karmatically bond to each other in a way. And my content might be only working for a certain group of people, but even if my work inspire one person to for them to achieve their wildest dreams, then that's a mission accomplished.
So, lastly, what advice would you give to someone who's just like starting out their Bitcoin journey, and especially the ones that are like coming from a non-technical background like yours?
I would say have some stake now. So if you're contemplating between if Bitcoin is worth it, remember that you don't have to go all in on your first day. It doesn't have to be a big decision. It can just be a casual decision where you're like, oh, I wonder what this Bitcoin thing is. I'm just gonna download something and download a wallet and play around. And I get $10 of Bitcoin in my Lightning wallet where I can spend next time I'm in a coffee shop where I can pay. I'm gonna play around with it. Bring a little bit of a gaming attitude into Bitcoin. Like, it's money, yes. It's the society, yes. And sometimes people say it's politics. Like, I'm a political person, but oftentimes Bitcoin has become quite political. We don't have to label Bitcoin as all these big and mighty things. We can just bring like a gaming perspective, a more relaxed approach into it. I'm just gonna see what happens. I'm just gonna play around and this use your curiosity more than your rational thinking, and treat this whole thing an experience. And I'm gonna find out if I can figure this out by myself. Like, challenge yourself with these little make it a game with yourself and your loved ones and your friends, and enjoy the journey, enjoy the experience itself, instead of thinking, oh, it's money, it's society, it's all this heavy and mighty and big things that I'm not interested in. We're all part of bring it down and take it less seriously. And I think to have a stake in it, just even if you have $10 worth of Bitcoin in your Lightning wallet, because you have a personal stake in it, even if it's just $10, it will change your perspective on how you would pay attention to information around Bitcoin. Because now we've we're heading into the mass adoption period where Bitcoin is now really in our face. Like we see it on the news. Sometimes we see it on the street because merchants take Bitcoin. And then we see Bitcoin like being more and more mentioned in various places. If we only have $10, but we have that $10, then next time you see something that's related to Bitcoin, you're more likely to pay attention because you have a personal stake. Two things: take it less seriously and buy a little bit of Bitcoin and see, and just forget about it. But just remember you have some and see what happens in your life that you were not paying attention before.
Could you please tell us where can we reach you? Where can we find your podcast?
Yes, so I'm on Twitter at BTCviv. Through the BTCviv, you'll be able to find the podcast for Twitter as well, called Live with Bitcoin. The handle is LiveWBitcoin. I'm also on Nostr, which you can also find on through these Twitter profiles. The podcast is everywhere. It's a video podcast, so you'll be able to see the host and the guest all together at the same time. They're on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. But yeah, Twitter would be a good way. Nostr would be a good way to find me. And if you ever tune in to Live with Bitcoin podcast, please let me know how you think. It's always really nice to receive feedback from the listeners on how they think about the episode. And yeah, check it out. It's a where we have hearty conversations, but we delve into some of the most important topics as humans. And I hope it will help you in one way or another.
Yeah, and I think we will also link it down below on our YouTube channel. The listeners will be able to find it easier. So thank you so much, Vivian, for your time today. And thank you also for the work that you are doing, because I think we really need people like you contributing to the community and being like this pop of color in all the doom and gloom that is going on in the world right now. So I really appreciate the work that you do, and hopefully we will be able to do another conversation about mass adoption when we are already over it. So thank you so much.
Thanks a lot for the great questions, Barbara, and lovely to chat with you. Thanks for the invitation again.
Thanks for tuning in to Bitcoin Kebab, the podcast by Bitcoin Globális.